Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with the market recap for the 9th of July. Good afternoon, Daniel. Always great to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good day in the market, an interesting day in the market, as it seems like we're just kind of waiting to see the Fed testimony here tomorrow. But after gapping down on the open, I mean, we really fought back, and for the most part, the Dow wasn't quite able to get back in the green, but the S&P, NASDAQ certainly were able to do so. So bulls are still out there. And good afternoon to you, Lauren. Hello there, Linda. Great to see you guys. As always, I hope you are doing well. Maybe some semiconductors setting up for some pullbacks if the market likes what it sees with the Fed testimony tomorrow. I think probably best before we make any major decisions, I think the way I'm going to approach it, at least kind of let tomorrow kind of play out a little bit, see if there is, a big reaction one way or the other. Just rather be safe than safe, I suppose. And good afternoon, Jeanette. Great to see you as well. Hope you're doing well. Right out of the gate, selling in the futures market, and bam, right out of the gate, buyer stepped right back in. And really, we had a nice little pause in the intraday, kind of the halfway point of the day. Really, as you can kind of see here, really nice last half hour or so of trading. So the sentiment was certainly very bullish on the intraday, even though we started out in a little bit of a hole. That's going to kind of get us looking like a little bit of a pullback. I think we kind of have to like where we are technically, as long as there's no curveballs thrown at that Fed testimony tomorrow. I expect we'll start to see a little bit more price movement. The headlines everywhere, and I get it. I've been feeling the same way, especially today. Let's just make sure there's nothing to see with that the Fed talk. We all know that can move the market, especially in the short term. So it feels like right now the market's just kind of waiting to get that info or lack of info, if that's the way it goes, before making that next move. But it's still technically, I really like where we're at. I think we're showing a lot of strength. We continue to see buyers now, really the last 3 days, right off of the intraday lows. Of course, today pretty much straight up hammer candlesticks both Friday and Monday here. So we're seeing that the bulls are quick to move back in. We all know the drill. We're hanging out, at or very close to new highs on the S&P and so many other things. I like where we are technically. Let's maybe get this news potential event out of the way. Clear us out the rest of the week, maybe into next week. On the earnings front, really light here today. We've got Levi, the biggest name in mid-cap stock. Recent IPO, actually, kind of strange that Levi Strauss, of all things, finally went public after all this time. Been around forever. They're about the biggest name reporting before the open here tomorrow. Really light week, as you guys know. Over 50 S&P companies reporting next week. A lot of the banks, JP Morgan, Citigroup, all of that fun stuff. United Health, Johnson & Johnson, a lot of big names to get us started. But we got a few more days before we get to that point. So over on the S&P, really not a lot here has changed. Looking like a little bit of a pullback. Still think you have to be overall bullish. I'm just going to kind of look to see how we respond to that Fed testimony here tomorrow. Charts are looking great. You look at the Dow, very similar, little pullback coming off of the intraday lows for the 3rd day in a row. Little bit of upward movement. If we could get some upward movement, say take out today's high tomorrow type of a candle, while not a very deep pullback, I would certainly argue that is a pullback opportunity, broadly speaking here. On not only the Dow, but the S&P as well. Hey, good to see you, buddy. Hope you are doing well. NASDAQ, probably the most interesting from the breakout perspective, right? Really strong day here. And one thing that really jumped out to me was the strength that we saw in a lot of the semiconductors. And then, of course, I went in, took a peek at finally starting to remember their ticker symbol, SMH, the ETF tracking, of course, the semiconductors. Really nice looking bullish candle. Slow little pullback, started kind of fast, but it's been slowing down. Nice upward movement here today. Certainly that's not hurting the NASDAQ. You also had things like Amazon break through some resistance, early in the trading day. Not an all-time high. They've got some overhead not too far away from where they are right now, but certainly anytime something that Amazon's in. Anytime Amazon has a good day, it's going to help that, whatever that is, right? In this case, the NASDAQ. You also had a Facebook, very, very similar, good, strong day. I think an aggressive trader might argue that it did break out. I would argue that it needs a little more upward movement, but a lot of good looking things over in the NASDAQ right now. A break of that resistance, a very good signal. If we break out of resistance, and maybe tomorrow's news is enough to be the catalyst to push us through there. We've got pullbacks in the Dow and the S&P, breakouts on the NASDAQ. That should technically line us up for a nice bullish rest of the week. If we don't like what we see, probably don't want to be too quick to react. Looking at breakdown candidates will always be on the table, of course, but I don't think, if tomorrow's response is negative, I don't think that's going to tell us a whole lot, technically at least. And lastly, over in the rut, just kind of hanging around here today, kind of finds itself in a new little sideways trading range within the longer term trading range. Still think this is best looked at as there you go, Lauren. That's a good way to put it. I've never been able to remember that symbol. I don't know what it is. Usually I have to type in the name, and then it's semiconductor, so it's a long name to boot. So, but not a lot to see here in the rut. I continue to look at this primarily as a sideways cash flow type of thing between this approximately 16 and 1500 area. We'll talk if we ever break above that resistance there, just north of 1600. But right now, still a little sideways within a lot sideways, in my opinion, at least over in the Russell. Interesting price action over in the material sector here today. This was one of those areas where the market as a whole gapped down and really fought back. This was one of those areas that we didn't see it. We really didn't see it. And I was, looking at some of the big names within this space, because that's usually my personal approach. We look at them all the time. Lynn, holding up nicely, still a breakout candidate in my opinion. ECL hanging out nicely, still a breakout candidate in my opinion. APD, if we see a little more selling for a pullback, these are definitely going on my list. Need at least another 2 days maybe before that pullback can be complete. But boy, I'm going to like that. So I was wondering, what's really causing the problems here? Why is this sector down so much here today? And a big part of it was copper. Things that were related to copper, they were really struggling here today. Copper down big, testing a support zone as well. If that gives out, that's going to kind of impact anything probably that is involved with copper. Those companies, of course, are in the materials ETF. So we're might have to start to separate them a little bit, kind of the chemicals, because chemicals, to me at least, pretty much look about the same. Some look better than others, of course, but don't look dramatically different to me than they have been. But some of these, copper companies, they might have a little bit of an impact on that. So we'll have to see how copper responds to that support level. Just something to keep an eye out for. I'm not really too concerned about the things that have been showing strength. The APD pullback, if that thing lines up in the next couple of days, I'm going to love it. That's, wishful thinking, maybe, what we can always hope. So breakouts, and Lynn in particular, but ECL as well, are both still very much in my personal list. So got to be a little bit careful. We are seeing a little more selling. I wish we would have at least put up a fight in that zone, but I don't think it's enough to clearly say that this is turning on us, at least as of right now. But going into tomorrow, I think we really are looking at breakouts. If that's how we want to trade XLB, we need at least one more turnaround type of a candle in my mind before we can, broadly speaking, try to get into the pullbacks, maybe the APDs of the world. Maybe we have a nice hammer candle or a doji tomorrow. That might make me feel a little bit better. I think, broadly speaking, we do need to wait for that before we get too crazy in the material sector. Over in the energy sector, just same thing, different day, just hanging out, hanging on that support level, going nowhere. Your guess is as good as mine. It seems very stuck. Nobody wants to make the first move. That nobody includes me. So until we get some clarity, it just going to be boring with energy, going to continue to be boring and fast when it comes to energy. Break below this floor that we are developing could be an interesting signal to the downside. To the upside, I don't even know. I mean, I would call a break of resistance a bullish signal, but then we've got the 200. So I'd probably say that would be the signal I'd be looking for. We're kind of stuck. Yeah, a big old nothing burger here in energy. It'll give us an opportunity, just to me at least not right now, and it's just not there yet. Finance, really strong day here after gapping down on the open, as you can kind of see. Really strong movement throughout the day, working right very, very close to those highs on the ETFs. Our biggest problem with finance right now is all of the earnings coming out next week. And of course, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. Not all of the stocks in XLF have earnings next week, but the big names do. Many of the companies that make up this ETF do have earnings here next week. And so that's the biggest issue I'm seeing right now within the financial sector. A break beyond this resistance level certainly would call it a bullish signal, but might have to kind of put financials as a whole onto the we'll see you 2 weeks from now, right? Once we've kind of powered through those earnings, that's a nice thing. They're first, but then they're done. While we have lots of other earnings, financial stocks are kind of, for the most part, especially the big names, will be done after that first earnings week. So got to be a little bit careful here. Technically, though, things are looking nice. Got some resistance. Do need to push through that before we probably should expect too much more continuation of this bullish move, but a break above that, clearly a bullish signal. Not really a lot of resistance until 29. So, maybe the ETF can, at least maybe be the vehicle that I look to going into this upcoming earnings if I want to trade into the financial sector, but I don't hold my swing trades through earnings. So this could be a way for me to at least consider trading into financial. I do like that break, and I do expect if we break that it's not a really tough road to 29, which isn't a lot of money, but is a lot of movement, right, on this ETF. Over in the industrials, just hanging out at support, much like the market fought back off of the gap down. We've almost kind of found ourselves in a little bit of a sideways range right now, with there being so many better looking things. I'm not turning on industrials, but they're certainly not my favorite thing right now. Looks like they've kind of found themselves stuck in a little bit of a range. I'll be turning to the old standbys until we kind of get a little bit of clarity. If we break this little support level, I'm going to be at least short-term worried. That would be our swing low. We've got a lot of history, as everybody here knows, in this price range. If this support gives out, I think you have to call that a little bit of a bearish signal. So until that happens, I'm going to be okay. I'll continue to look at my old standbys, primarily the defense industry, or at this point in time. You have NOC knocking on the door of a breakout, so certainly some a great looking chart to me over there. LMT, of course, holding its own as well. So not a whole lot has changed here in the industrials. Just think we have to be a little cautious. It has been a little bit lagging behind the market this past week or so. Holding support, definitely a positive. We see some upward movement off of this. That certainly could be helpful to anything that we're looking to trade. We haven't really done anything wrong just yet, but we haven't quite done anything right either, right? So let's at least get a little bit of upward movement, confirming that this support wants to hold before we get too crazy. That breaks below that. I think we do have to put a little bit of a bearish spin, at least short term, on the sector as a whole. Not necessarily things that look like NOC, though. I'll be happy to trade a breakout on NOC, really, unless the whole market is selling off. And anything that looks like it for that matter. Over in technology, again, a good solid day. We had a good day in the NASDAQ. That usually means we have a good day in the technology sector, seeing some nice movement in Visa, breaking out that little short-term top that they put together. We saw a nice little rebound day for Apple after gapping down on yesterday's downgrade. Some upward movement. I know some people would call that a pullback, and I wouldn't fight them on it by any stretch of the imagination. I think we need to see a little more movement before we are there. Oracle kind of running out of a little bit of steam, it looks like, after this just crazy easy run. Boy, that broke, and it just was a smooth sailor. I love the smooth sailors of the world. So things are looking pretty nice over there. We're going to have plenty of potential candidates within the semiconductor industry if we want them. We looked at SMH. You've got a nice pullback, or at least a pullback. Maybe you don't think it's nice, but it is a pullback on Applied Materials. But they're certainly not the only one within this space. So if you're looking for some trading ideas going into later in the week, might be something to take a peek at, see how we respond. AMD, great movement here today. A little tough to trade right now, I would think, but certainly a good solid day for the semiconductors as a whole here. So tech, let's get through that NASDAQ resistance. Boy, we might have some interesting things. If we can break resistance in the NASDAQ and have the semiconductors show some upward movement off of the pullbacks that we've seen, that could make a really interesting little run for the technology sector. Over in Staples, a little more selling here today than we saw, most of the rest of the market. As you can kind of see, we did come off of the lows, but not a particularly, great day for the sector as a whole. Don't really have any reason to think that means a whole lot. We are kind of fighting at this resistance zone. I think for extension or continuation signals, probably best to let us get through that before we get too aggressive. Still, I don't know how you can look at this through anything but bullish eyes. Just hanging around at resistance, taking a little bit of a breather. 58/50-day moving average still very important. As long as we're above that, I think you have to be very cautious as a bear. Over in the utilities, pushing closer and closer to that resistance. And we've kind of talked before, nothing to say negative about utilities. Just for me, for initiating any new utility plays, I do want to see it break through that resistance. Maybe that's just me being a little too cautious, and that's okay. That's a good chance that it is. But at resistance, would like to see my concerns, and they may not be legitimate. Just I know how utilities can go. They can go into sideways stretches for a while, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. If we own the utility stock, right? Maybe collect a little dividend there. But if we're trying to directionally trade them, it's just a lot easier if they're moving like they have been, after this recent break or support bounces that we've seen as of late. Overall, though, the sector continues to look very strong. Many of these stocks, are knocking on the door of all-time highs or 52-week highs, as everybody here knows. So break is what I'm looking for that continuation signal. Being a little cautious upon entering any new utility trades until I see that, or I'm back at support. Then we can have another conversation if we're back down at that support level. Little bit of a pullback day in the healthcare sector. Still a little rocky, but seeing some interesting things of note. I thought TMO was an interesting shallow pullback candidate. A little bit of a slow drift back. No upward movement, no confirmation just yet. You also had Boston Science, where you did get confirmation here today in a pretty nice way. Nice upward movement in a nice upward trend. So they're still out there within healthcare. There's still going to be potential bears. You have Lilly, it held up here today, but has not done anything to change the technicals. In my mind, still potentially a breakdown candidate, although probably not realistically speaking tomorrow, unless there's a heck of a lot of selling. We wouldn't see anything like that. So certainly some interesting things going on. Johnson & Johnson, of course, and United Health, WFC, all with earnings next week. So we are going to have to kind of keep that in mind as we're working into anything. But there are some big names in this sector reporting here next week that can impact the overall sector. Just something to keep our eyes open for. Resistance, kind of want to see it break this, but right now I could see people looking into this as a pullback opportunity. Have made higher highs and higher lows, a little slowing momentum as of late, but that kind of mimics a lot of what the market has been doing this last week, right? It looks very much, if we just look at the last several days of trading, looks very much like the broad market to me. So still open to both bullish and bearish plays, and there's both bullish and bearish ones out there always, but right now, certainly in the healthcare sector, I believe there are some interesting candidates on both sides. Over in XLY, wasn't a particularly rock star day, but of course we did have Amazon break out of some resistance, which is always a helpful thing. But really, that was kind of the big mover. As you can kind of see here, not a whole lot. Home Depot just kind of hanging, doji type day. McDonald's just kind of hanging, although I'm loving it, no pun intended, from the McDonald's song there, putting together a nice clear top. potential little breakout, just a shorter term version of this, right? At least potentially, we're seeing this in a lot of things. Certainly McDonald's an interesting one if I'm looking, to get me some Mickey D's or something along those lines. Starbucks, another one that looks a little similar to it as well. So really it was kind of not a lot of tremendous movement across the board. Amazon definitely played a big part in it. Not a ton of movement, but ultimately another good solid day, another day above the breakout point, another day inching toward all-time high. So it's hard to say anything other than, pretty positive things about the discretionary sector right now. Just, of course, this 118 zone of resistance, or I'm sorry, this 121 zone of resistance, that was the high point. So we are kind of dealing with all-time highs now as we're looking at this sector. Nice upward movement, took out that little intraday ceiling that we've built over the last couple of days, pushing through that here today. Same as always with real estate. Still, as long as we are, we're still holding up nicely, we're pushing, we have some room before we get to our all-time highs. Plenty of stocks, or REITs within this are looking, very, very strong. PSA hitting another 52-week high. There were several. There's about 20 S&P companies that hit new 52-week highs today, and a lot of them were REITs actually. So just continues to be very, very strong. A little bit of room too before we get into that resistance. Unlike utilities, that's kind of right at that resistance level. So same as always, at least it seems that way on the REITs. And lastly, XLC, a really interesting bullish candle engulfing yesterday's little red candle. We, of course, had some interesting things going on. Again, we took a peek at Facebook, but probably worth taking another peek, breaking out of a little bit of resistance, and certainly depending on the trader. I think Coach T said he actually took the break on this already. I'm a little more conservative when it comes to breakout trades, but doesn't matter, right? That's just me. Certainly some more upward movement could be enough to even get me sold on this break. Really nice movement over there. Of course, our other big name within this space being Google. Nice little bounce back day. We're still kind of stuck in a little pinchy action between the 9 and the 50 right now. I think at the very least we need to take out that high from last week before we think anything too crazy. Don't really think that that's a great trading opportunity, but that is just my opinion. If we break that, I will call it a bullish signal. And more importantly, that can certainly impact that ETF. You also had EA kind of hanging right at that support level just a little bit. So if you're a support bouncer, that trader, and I'm not really a type of trader that buys off of support. I'm more of a buy when it breaks resistance, sell when it breaks support type of a trader personally. But if I were a support bounce trader, well, hey, if this holds and history repeats itself, got a lot more to gain. And if it gives out and breaks that support, I'll get out, of course, taking a small loss. So interesting placement, whether you're a support bounce player or a potential breakdown trader. Me, I'll just talk about EA and do nothing with them. As you guys know, they are not friendly to me. So Disney knocking on the door of break, still ready to push through. Another interesting pullback was in Take-Two. The other video game company, you've got Activision, you've got EA, and then you've got Take-Two here, sitting kind of right in those, right between the rising 9 and that rising 20. No confirmation yet. Risk reward might be trouble to get just looking at it, but that's just first glance. Maybe that is not the case. So some interesting things going on over there. And on the actual ETF, that's a really nice looking candle. And so certainly something that we want to keep our eyes open for as we proceed forward. If we continue to see upward movement, we do have some primary resistance levels just above 51. And of course, our all-time just right above 52 on this ETF. So interesting things going on out there, both from a bullish and a bearish point of view. Some interesting breaks, some interesting pullbacks, breakdowns. You have Dell's continuing to sit right at support level. VMW broke down here, either yesterday or today, depending on your rules. So there's certainly bull plays and bear plays. There were several things on the stock or options report that hit, at least potentially hit, depending on your rules, entry point. So I definitely take a peek at those before you call it a day here today. But before we get too crazy, in my mind, we'll just kind of let's see what, if anything, comes out of tomorrow. I'm not overly concerned, but it is the type of thing that if we see big movement one way or another, oh, makes sense. And the great thing about it is we have some potential breakout candidates, potential breakdown candidates. Well, that should make me feel comfortable, whichever way it decides to go. If it decides to show really any big movement at all, certainly a possibility is it's a big nothing burger too, right? A lot of times we think stuff's going to be more important than it is, whether we're right or not. Over in the dollar, nice little upward move here today, just continuing to work. We do have a little bit of history, as everybody here knows, that we're working into in that 97.60, 50.60 range. So that might be a little bit of a resistance catalyst to keep an eye out for. Not much to see here right now from a swing trading perspective, kind of putting us back within this range, at least for the time being. Over on the VIX, not a lot here either, just another day at the office in the market. Over in the metals, kind of holding our support zone, seeing a little bit of buyers step back in off of that support level / that 20-period moving average. Aggressively, some upward movement could be a signal from a bullish point of view to try to trade it back towards those highs. Conservatively, that's a pretty aggressive trade. I don't think I would feel comfortable with that trade, but I am pretty conservative, so that doesn't mean anything other than I'm kind of a wimp, is all that means. But certainly getting some information that this 1385 zone is an important support level for us to watch going forward. Let's see how we respond. A little bit of upward movement again, buying off the support, certainly not the worst thing a trader could do. Got a pretty clear resistance level at approximately 1440 to be keeping our eyes out for. Over in silver, a little bit of a bounce back day, but again, it's misbehaving. It is not an easy read for me, at least right now. So I continue to just let it do whatever it's going to do without me. I get boomerangs if you're interested in buying silver. I get intraday plays. There's definitely been plenty of movement. Swing trades, I don't know. I mean, I honestly think it's darn near 50-50 if this thing goes up or down, based off of, where it is. We have a higher swing low, but we're testing this old trend line. We broke down, but we're holding support. We've got the 200 working for us. I mean, it's just so easy if you're biased to probably come up with a reason why you should be a bull or a bear. And whenever that's the case, when there's some clear, yeah, that makes sense, I could see your case, and that makes sense for both sides, probably means not something for me, at least not today. Another little bit of a bounce back day here on natural gas. Haven't cleared resistance yet. A break above that resistance, I do think we have to call that a bullish signal. Whether that's just to get out of bearish trades or not look to get in on bearish trades, at least for the very short term, that's probably up to you or the individual trader. That's going to be a tough fight, right? We haven't been able to do that just yet. Of course, we looked at this on the weekly, and that's kind of how I'm looking at it going into this week. Just going to let this week play out. If we see a red candle, that could be a potential pullback bear retracement opportunity, but I want to see that develop all week long. If we close above that breakout point, or that breakdown point, I'm sorry, in that 50-day moving average, we would also be closing above the 9 EMA for the first time in a very, 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 very long time, as you can see. So this week's candle might be very important for natural gas. I think at best, if it was going to be a pullback opportunity, it's too aggressive for me now. Some breaking of these two lows from today and yesterday could be a little bit of a sell signal, but we've captured that rising 9. Now we have that 20 that could potentially be something to prop us up. So I think we got to be real careful with the retracement. Breaking above that old breakdown point, I mean, that is a bullish signal. I mean, that's a little too aggressive, a little too early in my eyes to do anything, but would have to call it that. So I'm really looking for this one to be, let's see where we are when we close, and then kind of get a game plan going into next week, potentially based off of the open. And lastly, over in crude, nice little move here today, coming well off the intraday highs, still kind of stuck in the middle. We broke above those averages on the intraday, but as you can kind of see, close right at those averages here today. Probably, for me at least, from a bullish point of view, need to kind of get back above that 60, probably on the breakout side of things for me. Not really all that keen, at least from a swing trading perspective, of trying to catch this with all of this on top of us. So 60 continues to be the major level of resistance. Beyond that, certainly could talk. Just was not a very, we sold so heavily, and just not a very clean pullback opportunity that developed, at least to me. I'm sure some people took advantage of it. I unfortunately was not one of them. So not a whole lot has changed here on crude. So that is where we find ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, an interesting place in the market. We've got pullback candidates. We've got breakout candidates. We've got breakdown candidates in a wide variety of sectors. So it really is starting to feel like a stock picker's market. The only thing that feels like I don't know what the heck you're supposed to do with it is energy. I really feel like I have no idea what you're supposed to do with that right now. So it's the only one that's kind of on timeout for me, at least. We, of course, have our coaches show going on here tonight to go over that next module of the STEP system for all of our pro members tonight. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Of course, if you're not a pro member, it's not too late to, send us an email, team@tackletrading.com. Head over to tackletrading.com. We'll get you hooked up with a free trial. You can come hang out with us, go through the STEP system, and see what we're all about. We'd love to have you. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for the market recap today. But as always, guys, it is certainly my pleasure. I appreciate everybody's time. It's great to see you guys, as always. Those of you who catch the recording a little later, always appreciate it as well. I hope to see you live one of these days. I know it's a weird time. I didn't even think about that when we started doing the market recap almost like a year ago now. At least I think it was about a year ago, because that's just when I've always done my routine, is after the market closed. And then one day I realized, wow, yeah, that's like nobody's free time. So absolutely. So it'll be a lot of fun in the coaches show here tonight. Of course, if you are new around here, you know the drill. We, of course, invite you to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, join us over at Tackle Trading on Twitter. You can find me at Frank Martin 23 on Twitter. We've got the stock of the week Pinterest over on the Instagram page, the Tackle Trading Instagram page. I haven't had a chance to check it out. Really, a little newer than I'm comfortable with, but I'm really interested in seeing what there is to see with Pinterest. I think Mark sold a put on it today in the halftime report. He's weird like that. So thank you guys all very much. It is certainly my pleasure. I appreciate you guys hanging out, talking stock with me, going through the daily routine as always. So get the heck out of here. You guys have a fantastic Tuesday afternoon. Enjoy the coaches show here tonight. We'll see how the market responds to this Fed testimony here tomorrow. Maybe get a little clarity, or more, maybe just realize, it was just a big old nothing burger. Now I'm going to be on, I've got nothing burger stuck in my head. I'm going to have to make some hamburgers, barbecue some hamburgers tonight, Lauren. So thank you for that. I needed an excuse for some hamburger barbecuing, and I think you officially given it to me. So thank you very much for that. All right, guys, get out of here. Have a great day. Have fun in the coaches show. I will see you same time, same place here tomorrow. Bye, everybody.